Hi there, and thank you so much for joining us today. You are listening to Society Bites Radio, social interaction for the mind and soul. It is part of the Radio Ear Network family, and I am your host, Sue Ashby. And this is Over the Edge. I have a wonderful guest today who's going to talk to us about being neighbourly in a slightly different way from normal. The gentleman's name is Deist, and he's a retired healthcare executive who is an experienced counsellor, caseworker, and therapist, and he has 3 decades of experience administering psychiatric facilities, nursing homes, and assisted living facilities. I think I'm going to be needing one of those soon. Anyway, he has always been interested in helping people to live independently and to avoid institutionalization. And he's particularly interested in housing for singles and couples. His neighbours concept involves voluntary mutual support among residents of his pocket neighbourhoods in order to combat isolation and to assist participants to remain independent. These people can either be retiree or they can still be involved in the workforce. Now, hi, Van. It's so nice to have you on the show.
Well, thank you very much, Sue.
Oh, that's a pleasure. I think one of the concepts when we were talking recently that I thought was very, very interesting is neighbourly neighbours. How many of us actually have those in ordinary communities? Tell us a little bit about your concept.
Okay. Well, neighborly neighbors, you used to find it in ethnic neighborhoods and particularly in mobile home parks where people were involved socially with one another. Now that we have gated communities and our communities are more spread out, you don't have that contact one with another. So there's a movement called intentional communities, and most effectively the co-housing group has this type of concept where they get together with the intention of being involved with one another. However, in my experience, I found that co-housing is rather expensive. It's very involved. I want something more affordable and simple. So that's where I gravitated towards neighborly neighbors. The concept is to create a pocket neighborhood, a cluster of homes where the people who are going to buy into it agree up front to be involved with one another as much as they want. It's just voluntary, but it has to have an added towards inclusivity. So that's the concept. I'm currently building a model. I'm dealing with small houses. I'm interested in singles and couples houses, and what we're doing is a mini home. It's 624 square feet. It's basically like a studio apartment. It's a studio cottage. It works well with one person, and it could work well with a couple, provided they get along together really well.
It's going to be close contact type stuff.
Yeah.
600 plus square feet sounds really small to me. It's almost like the sort of tiny home concept that we see on television.
Well, yeah, it's bigger than tiny homes. Tiny homes really can't afford the space for wheelchair accessibility, which is a basic part of what I'm doing. It's not only people getting older and more frail and disabled, but people of all times in their life might incur an injury. And I have an aunt and uncle. My uncle suffered a fall, and he couldn't get up to the second floor bedroom. So to have a bedroom on the first floor and to have wheelchair accessibility is primary in what I'm doing. More contractors are building in accessibility into the homes. It doesn't cost any more when you're building. You have hallways that are 42 inches wide. You have wider doorways, which are 36 inches wide. You have things like a roll-in shower. It's a nice feeling, whether you're in a wheelchair or not, to be into this open area for your shower. To have things like a roll under sink, so that you can, if you are in a wheelchair, you can get close to the sink. Same thing with the stovetop. to be able to roll under the stove part so that you could reach everything on the stove. These are simple things. Even the windows are lower so that if you're in a wheelchair, you're not looking at the wall, you're actually looking out the window. So it takes a lot of planning and insight to do this. AARP has wonderful materials on wheelchair accessibility and to upgrade your homes. But from starting from scratch and building the concept in, it makes a lot of sense.
And also it means you don't have to, I mean, say you're sort of getting older and you don't know what's around the corner. It means you don't have this huge thing of having to suddenly think, well, where am I going to go? How am I going to do this? You're going to be in it already.
Absolutely. Not only that, but the whole retirement industry is moving towards in-home services. Medicare is expanding into in-home services, and the VA has a program called Aid in Attendance where they pay for people to come in. Services in the home is much less expensive than institutionalization. And you had mentioned about the size of the property. I currently live in a studio apartment that's 20 by 20, which is 400 square feet. It's pretty ample for me. I live alone. My mother was just in an assisted living facility for a while, and her studio apartment was smaller than mine. So 624 square feet is actually larger than you might imagine, especially with the construction that I'm using. We're doing vaulted ceilings, so when you come in, it seems more spacious than what it really is.
Height makes a lot of difference, doesn't it? Just the fact that you're not sort of crushed downwards. If you've got some height to the ceiling, the place looks much bigger.
Absolutely. It feels very spacious.
So tell me a little bit about, okay, I know what your background is, and we've told our listeners the background. What sort of triggered you into this? There must have been a sort of an event or something that happened, into maybe a family member or something that you were involved with that made it seem so important.
Yeah, I had a personal experience. I took care of my aunt for 5 years, and during that time she was diabetic and had to have a amputation, so she was in a wheelchair. So I designed a home. It was 1,000 square feet, 2 master bedrooms, had all the things that I just mentioned, had a roll-in shower and a roll-under sink, and had all those things built into it. And I built it for her. I lived in it with her. We each had our master bedroom, and I saw how effective it was. She was able to go inside and outside. She'd go outside on the porch and sun herself, and she was able to make herself a meal. It really made a big difference in her life, because while we were having the house built, we rented a house, and all these architectural barriers were just outstanding. She couldn't get out of the house because there was a step to get out of the house. If you're in a wheelchair, you can't negotiate steps very well. So I learned from that experience, but professionally, I ran nursing homes for a long time. So I was very familiar with wheelchair accessibility. And I always had an interest in saving people from institutionalization. When I was a nursing home administrator, one of my biggest fears that I get old and have to move from my office up front to one of the rooms in the back. And I wasn't looking forward to that. So I became involved with assisted living back when it was just in its infancy, and encouraging people to use that rather than a nursing home if they didn't need it. Then from that, I went into housing, and with the advent of in-home services, saw how important it was to have a wheelchair accessible environment, because you could have services come in now. Even with Publix, you could order your groceries online and have them delivered to you. You can be in contact with your doctor online. Mm-hmm. They can take your blood pressure readings, everything done from remote control. So all these things are promoting independence, provided you take advantage of them.
I think that's very, very valid. I think, and you're getting over it by neighborly neighbors, but I think I have people that I know who rarely go out and rarely talk to people. And that, of
Right.
course, is not good for anybody. I mean, it's not good for them. It's probably
Yeah.
not good for their family members either, because the concerns grow accordingly.
Right.
So
Go ahead.
how do you create this isolationist world that we're all getting into being how I remember it as a child, where everybody spoke and we knew everybody, and okay, sometimes we knew too much. It was a bit, in your face. But
Yeah.
if we were in trouble, like my grandmother set the house I lived in on fire, I just ran across the road and got somebody.
Uh-huh.
I don't know whether I do that now, because I mean, I do know my neighbors over the road, but generally speaking, people don't really know each other anymore.
Right, and it's a lot of isolation. When a person is isolated, their whole perspective of the world changes, and depression usually comes in. Uh, you have to have contact with other people, and even if there's an accident, if nobody checks on you, you're going to be out of luck if you don't have one of those buttons to
Yes.
alert buttons. A friend of mine, his mother fell down the basement steps. She shouldn't be going in the basement anyhow. But she wasn't found for a day and a half, and she ultimately died. She was in shock. So it's really important that people check on one another, and the socialization that comes to it. With co-housing, I've been to several co-housing projects, and people did get together and share a meal. Uh, they get together and have coffee. They talk. They play cards, Scrabble, whatever. It's an opportunity to connect with other people. So with neighborly neighbors, what I intend to do is to build a cluster of these small cottages and invite people to come in and purchase them. But they have to be agreeable to being a neighborly neighbor. If you're a homebody and you don't get involved and you're not social, that's not really the place for you, and it's not somebody that we really need. We need somebody who's more gregarious, more open to being with other people, and that's the situation that we want to create. When I was dealing with co-housing, I ran several workshops, and people came to the workshops, and we discussed the socialization that's involved in the interconnectedness, and it's really the way to go in the future. Now, my little 10 house cluster of homes, my pocket neighborhood, isn't going to save the world, but it could be replicated. It could be replicated. And what you really do is create a neighborhood that is consisting of people who care for one another.
You wouldn't think it would be difficult, would you? You really would not think it would be difficult. I mean, vetting these people, I mean, I guess somebody can sort of say, oh, I get on with everybody, I'm really helpful. How do you actually get the right people? Because anyone can say that, but they may not really be like that.
Right. Well, my background is as a psychologist, and I'm pretty proficient in running groups. And people expose themselves more than they originally intend to when they go into groups. So somebody who says, "Oh yeah, I'm an open person. I'm open to socialization and helping others." When you have a group meeting and things are exposed, people reveal themselves honestly, and it's to both advantage of the person and to the community. That if you're not fit for it, exclude yourself. So, but that's what I've done. I've run these workshops when people get into discussions and they start being introspective and try to find out what they're really about and how much they're committed to doing what they say.
I mean, all it need be is sort of popping around and saying, I'm just going to Publix. I mean, this goes
Right.
worldwide, but Publix, can I get you anything? Or
Right.
it's not rocket science, is it?
No, no, it's not. It's just a comradeship.